Well, here we are in Pipe Dream, which originally had a working title of Bounce. In a way, it's the sequel to the first full music animation ever produced back in 1990 called More Bells and Whistles. In that video, the musical fountain played by ball bearings fired out of a central spout was a big hit, so I decided to build an entire environment around that concept. This piece is probably the best example of why the music animation technique we use is not what's referred to as real-time. In a real-time music visualization system, you'd react to notes played right at the moment when they're played, or even with some delay. But this doesn't let you do any pre-motion, any animation of an element leading up to the note starting. The problem with real-time systems is that since no matter how fast a computer is, you can't predict the future, you don't know what pre-motion to animate before the note starts playing. Once the note starts, it's already too late. Using this piece as an example, you need to know what note is coming up before you can fire a ball bearing out of the tube to hit the element that makes the note. In effect, you need to know the future, at least for a fixed window into the future of like a couple of seconds or so. So we need to know that info, which is provided in the MIDI file, in order to see what notes are coming up, as well as what notes are currently sounding and what notes have ended in the recent past. We really need all three of those. An example of notes in the past being important is the follow-through motion of, say, swaying cymbals or vibrating strings, oscillating vibes and chimes. Of course, that aspect of motion could be done by a real-time system, as long as the rendering was fast enough, but that takes us to the second part of why this isn't real-time. Computer graphics images take a while to generate by the computer if you have objects of a certain complexity, and a certain number of lights, etc. Generally, the more polygons used to construct the object, and the more lights, especially if they cast shadows, and the more complex the surface pattern is, the longer it takes to generate or render the image. So depending on complexity and also the processor speed of the computer, these images can take anywhere from 5 minutes to a half an hour each. There's about 30 frames a second for NTSC video, actually 29.97, but who's counting? So multiply that out and that's a lot of render time. This is why computer graphics production facilities have large render farms of computers that do nothing other than render 24/7. You may be wondering why there are dents on the wall and on the floor where stray balls must have hit. And I think the answer is probably that this thing didn't always work perfectly well, and during prototyping, testing, and practice, there were lots of misfires. But by now, the bugs have all been worked out, or at least this was a good take.